Thank you. It's great to be here. I so appreciate the work you do. And as David suggested, last night we had a huge victory when John McCain, a name you may be familiar with, stood up on the House floor as Byron Dorgan and I were working on strengthening the Buy America provisions that it just seems to me that American taxpayers are willing to reach in their pocket and spend tens of billions of dollars to build infrastructure, water and sewer and bridges and broadband and help colleges and students and all of that. But they want two things. They want the product, they want the construction done by American workers, and they want the materials for the construction made in America. And I think that the Senate decided 2-1. That was a good idea. And it's a thrill to be up here with Lois, who has done terrific work in so many ways. I'm so appreciative. Sherrod, thank you for the work that you have done in building a progressive movement in this country and the work that you will be doing with Joe Biden. He is an economist that we all appreciate the way that his emphasis is whatever the opposite of trickle down is, that's his emphasis, and building from the bottom up. And what can you say about it? And, what can you say about Jim Hoffa? Jim Hoffa has just been a great progressive leader in the last few years in this country. And I unfortunately have to go back. We have votes this afternoon, but I love hearing Jim Hoffa stand up and speak, especially when he talks to Teamsters. And I remember seeing him during one of the first times when I saw environmentalists and labor working so well together was in Seattle in 1999, right? Was that 99? The Battle of Seattle. And I was in a Teamster hall the first time I ever heard Jim Hoffa speak, and I understand why he wins Teamster elections after watching him speak that day. That's been for almost 10 years. Thank you again. Some of you know, and some of those people from Ohio, many of them particularly from northern Ohio, thanks for being here. My mother, whom some of them knew because my mother was so involved in progressive politics, and my mother, at the age of 88, died earlier this week, and I was with her while she was doing great. She was very active up until mid-December, and then she got sick, and then she just kind of downhill. But I got to spend almost every day with her, except on inauguration week. She said to my wife, she said, "Connie and Sherrod, you're going to the inauguration." This was about Thursday or Friday. She said this, and she said, "And I'm going to make sure I live till Tuesday to make sure I see Barack Obama president," and she did. So. And any of you that have taken care of a dying parent, it's both awful and wonderful. And I just feel so privileged. I was with my mom, and she died on Monday morning, and I got to talk to her. She was pretty talkative all the way up until about a day and a half, maybe 2 days before. But I was reading things. I would read to her. I'd read favorite Bible verses. I remember one day. This is a true story. I got out. We were just talking about hymns that we sang in our St. Luke's Lutheran Church when I was growing up, and she was talking about when she asked me to sing this one hymn, and I sang it, and she said, "That was nice, but you sound better in a group." So that was the last hymn she ever heard me sing. But anyway, that's a true story. This is everything's different now. I mean, this is as bad a shape as the economy is in. We have the kind of leadership in this country, as Senator Klobuchar and Senator Stabenow said earlier, to begin to turn this country around. And I look what you're doing, and that's so important. It really, it started with inauguration week, and the day after the inauguration, I went to the National Prayer Service at National Cathedral, and to me, it was the high point of the whole inaugural 3 days. And I heard a sermon by Reverend Sherrod, and her sermon was called Harmonies of Liberty. And she told a story I'd never heard before. It's an old a story attributed to the Cherokee Nation. And the story goes like this. One evening, a grandfather was teaching his young grandson about the internal battle that each of us as human beings faces. He said, this grandfather said to his grandson, "There are two wolves struggling inside each of us. One wolf is vengeful, angry, resentful, self-pitying, and fearful. The other wolf is compassion and faithfulness and hope and truth and love." The grandson thought for a moment, then he said, "Grandfather, which wolf wins?" And the grandfather replied, "The one you feed." And I look at for our nation's economic policies, especially as they relate to green jobs, especially as they relate to our environment. It's time to feed hope. It's time to feed this new progressive era. And that's our mission today. That's our mission in the years ahead. And I look at the feeding that you've already done. I think about, when I've been in politics a long time, and my career started in the 1970s in Mansfield, Ohio, and in those days, in the 70s and 80s, it was always, okay, you can have jobs or you can have a good environment. You can hire more people or you can clean up the air and the water. And that was the way that it was always sold to us. But in the last few years, Americans, led by the Blue-Green Alliance, led by organized labor and environmental groups, the Sierra Club and others, have understood that, in fact, the best environmental policy is a good jobs policy. The best jobs policy is a good environmental policy. And we understand that now, but we understand that because of the 2.5-year-old, roughly, Blue-Green Alliance. And it's just remarkable. I remember in the early days talking to people like Jim and Leo Gerard and talking to the Sierra Club and talking to all kinds of people that all were allies, I thought, in every way. And they were the beginning of that, just a few people. And now look at this. Look what you've done. And it's so exciting with the new Obama administration, with a much more progressive House and Senate, in larger progressive majorities, and with this kind of citizen involvement, because this only happens, whether it's not just the 2006 elections or the 2008 elections, it's what you all do every single day, fighting for justice in the workplace, fighting for safe drinking water and clean air. I wear on my lapel, and this was given to me actually by the steelworkers about 10 years ago, it's a depiction of a canary in a bird cage, and the mine workers, as you remember, 100 years ago, not that you remember from 100 years ago, but the mine workers used to take canary down in the mines. If the canary died from toxic gas or lack of oxygen, the mine worker knew he had to get out of the mine. He had no government to protect him in those days. He had no union, a government that cared enough, and he had no union strong enough to protect him. He was on his own. And look what the progressive movement has done in this country in these 100 years. The progressive movement, whether it's people in their union halls or people in their church parishes or people in their temples or environmentalists on the streets or environmentalists working in the corporate world, however, all together, look what we've accomplished in these 100 years. Progressives keeping their focus on fighting for people less privileged. Everything from in 1900, when the mine workers still took the canary down in the mine, the life expectancy in our country was about 46 years old. Today it's 3 decades longer because of this progressive movement. Medicare, Social Security, ban on child labor, safe drinking water, clean air, seat belts, airbags, all the kinds of things, Social Security, all the kinds of things that you have fought for. Never easy. There was always pushback. There was always pushback by industry, always pushback by organized interest against progressives. But look what we've done in the last 100 years. That we live 30 years longer, healthier, safer lives. And you look at the progress we've made. And that's why what you do is so important, and what you're going to continue to do is so important.